Test is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the January 25th, 2023, 2 p.m. meeting of the Debt Affordability Advisory Committee to order, otherwise known as DAC. I'd like to acknowledge that members, State Budget Director Christian Walker and State Controller Nels Roseland is she has joined us, but we're still waiting possibly on Nels. And I want to thank previous State Controller Linda Combs and previous State Budget Director Charlie Bruce for their service along the line. With that, I'll ask Cindy to call the roll.
This is Cindy Aiken, Council. Let's see, Director Walker. Oh, there she is. Just test your mic for us.
Present.
Thank you. Secretary Penny.
Present.
Thank you, sir. Is Mr. Roseland on?
Here.
Thank
Present.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Akmus.
I'm here.
Mr. Briner.
Present.
Mr. Cianelli.
I'm here. Present.
Thank you. Mr. Pomeroy.
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Auditor Wood. Is she absent? Thank you. And Treasurer Falwell.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum, and the members of staff in attendance here in the room are Louis Andrews, Director of State Debt, Sharon Edmondson, LGC Secretary, myself, Cindy Aiken, Debbie Tabasco on staff, and Victoria Bledsoe on staff. Just briefly, especially members, if some of it's controlled by Debbie or Victoria on the muting part. But if you have a necessity to leave the meeting while we're underway, please give us a note of that. We'll record that in the minutes. And when you come back, the meeting's being recorded, so all sound and audio here in the room are being broadcast. So if we lose tech ability or audio, the broadcast continues, and anything you say might continue to be heard. Please mute yourself as possible when you're not speaking, and we will proceed on. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to also welcome David Vanderwide here from legislative staff. Thank you for joining us. And if you'll stand and let's join me in our Pledge of Allegiance and our salute to the North Carolina flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of North Carolina and pledge to the old North State love, loyalty, and faith. Thank you all very much. I was asking Louis how long this would last. Would it be like Elizabeth Taylor's 6th wedding, where she said this is not going to take long? He said it's going to be about 30 minutes, so somebody will have to fact check that, see if she was married for longer than 30 minutes or not. Please take a moment to review the agenda. Does anyone have a present, actual, potential, or appearance of conflict of interest regarding the matters that are before us? Hearing none, as we've done in the past, especially during COVID, I'll entertain motions and seconds. Without objection, that's without objection. Anybody who makes a motion or a second to a motion will be considered a yes vote. Hearing no objection, do I hear a motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 25th, 2022?
Move the approval. Penny.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Cianelli.
Thank you, Ms. Cianelli. Motion second being had. Any further discussion about the meeting minutes? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Thank you. Director Walker.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Roseland.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Akmus. We'll come back. Mr. Briner.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Pomeroy.
Aye.
All right, Mr. Akmus, can you hear me? Voting on minutes.
All right.
Treasurer Follow.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you for that motion. Now I'll turn the meeting over to Lewis, who will discuss our debt affordability study. For the general public and especially members of this committee and staff, this is another fantastic report. We want to thank all the staff at the Local Government Commission, the General Assembly, physical research staff, and OSBM for helping this jump up on the table. So, Lewis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can everyone hear me okay? Slides.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, first slide. Okay, let's, next slide. Okay, let's first review the mission of the Debt Advisory Committee. The committee is legislatively directed to annually advise the governor and the General Assembly of the estimated debt capacity of the general fund and transportation funds for the upcoming 10 years. Recommend other debt management policies that consider desirable and consistent with the sound management of the state's debt. The debt study is due each year on February the 1st. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Okay. And this here's
No problem.
our committee. As Treasurer Falwell mentioned, we have a new state budget director, Christian Walker, on this time, and state controller, Nils Rolston. Next slide. Okay. What is debt affordability? The amount of debt that can be prudently authorized and issued in a given period without negatively affecting the credit position or impairing the budget flexibility of the issuer. The amount of affordable debt is limited. Debt affordability modeling allows capacity to be measured and compared. Control of debt levels protects the state's credit. That's the key here. Okay, this next chart is a summary of the state's outstanding debt at June 30th, 22. And we'll start at the top. GO bonds, of course, are voter-approved bonds, which pledge the full faith and credit of the state. State had 2.3 billion GO bonds outstanding at 6/30/22. The last of the highway GO bonds issued in the early 2000s were retired back in June of 2020. Tax-supported special indebtedness bonds are non-voter approved bonds supported by designated appropriation. Examples are limited obligation bonds such as Build NC highway bonds. Special indebtedness outstanding was 2.3 billion at June 30th. North Carolina Turnpike Authority gap funded appropriation bonds. These are revenue bonds with an appropriation support element designed to fill a revenue gap. We had 723 million as of June 30th. Other non-tax supported debt includes Garvey bonds, which are supported by federal reimbursement, energy saving contracts, and North Carolina Turnpike Authority revenue bonds. Those came in at about 3 billion on June 30th. Total outstanding debt at 8.4 billion. Slide. Okay, this next slide is a pie chart view of the state's outstanding debt by purpose at fiscal year end. And like in past years, higher ed makes up the largest portion, as about 40.7%. The recent growth area has been transportation, coming in at 35.5%. And the last of the GO bonds with public school purpose will reach maturity, final maturity in 2025. You can see there's just a sliver there remaining of those. Next slide. AAA states. The list of AAA peers has not changed very much over the past few years. Minnesota was upgraded into AAA by all three major rating agencies in 2022. There are now 14 states with a AAA rating. And I looked back yesterday to 2005, and there were only 8 AAA states back then. So the list has grown. Okay, comparative position. As a performance measure, we like to compare ourselves with our AAA peers. And as you can see, North Carolina falls right on the median for debt to personal income and better than median on debt per capita and debt as a percent of GDP and debt service ratio rankings. For fiscal 22, breaking out the general fund, they ended with a debt to personal income ratio, $326 debt per capita, and general fund tax supported debt as a percent of general fund DAC revenues of 2.0%. Highlights of capacity modeling at the DAC committee's direction. Continued the single tier calculation using 4% of DAC revenues as the governing metric for general fund debt capacity. 10-year solution horizon. Capacity solution looks out over 10 years, year over year, and optimized. Optimized is simply the level amount of new debt that can be issued each and every year without a debt service exceeding the 4% of DAC revenue limit. All outstanding and authorized but unissued debt is included. Of course, the general fund currently has no authorized but unissued debt. Calculation takes into account retirement of debt. Had one series of bonds retired in fiscal 22, two series in 23, and there'll be two series in 2025. Self-supporting debt or debt supported by non-tax revenues is excluded. For the general fund, that's guaranteed energy savings contracts. 20-year maturity schedule, and sensitivities provided. A forecast is just a forecast, so we provide sensitivity just for later changes. Okay, next slide. A review, this slide from last year, a review of the Connect NC General Obligation Bond Program. As we saw last year, the Connect NC GEO bonds authorized were capped by state law 2021-180. To the amount that was already issued, which was $1.6 billion. The remainder is to be funded through appropriation of up to $400 million to complete the projects approved for funding under the NC Bond Act. Next slide. Okay. As mentioned earlier, there's no future general fund debt authorized but unissued GO or special indebtedness. And so what you're seeing on this chart is just simply outstanding general fund bonds paying down. They're going down fast. Next slide. This next slide profiles the general fund debt service curve. As general fund debt outstanding continues to decline, the associated debt service declines sharply in future years as well. Assuming no new authorizations, general fund bonded debt service will reach zero by 2041. Slide. Okay, this slide profiles general fund debt service versus the 4% of DAC revenues limit 5-year view. The green bars represent debt service. The blue caps represent the recommended $100 million contribution to the solvency fund to reduce pension and OPEB liabilities. The red line represents the 4% of DAC revenues, and the white space in between is debt capacity. And as you can see, there's a lot of general fund capacity building up. And the solution results, general fund debt capacity is, first year is 5.1 billion of general fund capacity available. The optimized solution allows 1.6 billion to be issued each and every year over the 10-year DAC horizon. Okay, other measures that we evaluate for affordability are 10-year payout ratio, 83% of the state's general fund debt to pay off in the next 10 years. That's well above the 55% target that we've set. General fund debt to personal income is well below the 2.5% target at a very manageable 0.6. Percent general obligation debt outstanding currently is 49.5%. Will continue to decline as more built-in special indebtedness debt is issued in the next few years, and older GO bonds continue to reach final maturity. Fund balance and reserves are high. Rating agencies cite this as a credit strength, almost $18.5 billion at June 30th, 22. And as you can see there, a couple of quotes from the rating agencies talking about how well the state's managing its pay down of debt and managing reserves. Next slide. This chart shows a summary of the state's general fund balance history over the past 5 years. Shows strong growth in fund balance and reserves over that period. Fund balance of almost 18.4 billion at June 30th. Saving reserve of almost 3.1 billion at June 30th. That's a very positive trend for credit stream. Okay, this next slide's interesting. This chart includes general fund and highway debt outstanding and plots the ratio between the two primary types of tax-supported indebtedness, GO and special indebtedness. The state's debt composition is changing. Assuming no new authorizations of GO debt is projected, the special indebtedness outstanding will forge ahead of GO debt outstanding in 2023 and future years. The Build and See highway bonds are driving special indebtedness debt higher. And as we mentioned, older GO bonds are continuing to reach final maturity almost every year, driving that trend. On to transportation debt order. At the DAC committee's direction, we're continuing the single tier calculation using 6% of transportation revenues as a governing metric for transportation debt capacity, a 10-year solution horizon. All outstanding and authorized but unissued highway debt is included. Build-in C bonds are currently the only tax-supported highway bonds with authorization to go forward. Calculation takes into account retirement debt. Debt-like obligations are included, such as gap funding, availability payments, and RAM payments. Self-supporting debt or debt supported by non-tax revenues are excluded. Example of that would be Garvey bonds and North Carolina Turnpike revenue bonds. Results are presented on a year and optimized basis, and sensitivities provided for transportation as well. What's new with transportation is a new revenue source. Beginning in state fiscal year 2023, a portion of sales and use tax revenues collected under General Statute Chapter 105, Article 5, the state's general rate of tax set in General Statute 105-164A will be transferred quarterly to the Highway Fund and the Highway Trust Fund. The sales and use tax transfer to transportation has had a material impact on transportation debt capacity in future years. Transportation model results. This is the first time in several years that transportation has had additional debt capacity, which is mostly due to the new revenue stream that we saw in the previous slide. First year capacity of approximately 503 million or 90 million per year across the 10-year DAC horizon is now available for transportation. This is the chart that plots transportation debt service versus the 6% limit. The goal line represents the 6% of transportation revenue limit for transportation debt service. If you remember from the 2020 debt affordability study, the 6% of revenue line did not clear the debt service bars beginning in fiscal year 2026. The new sales and use tax transfer projections have opened up a limited amount of debt capacity this year. You can see the capacity in between the bars and the goal line. Slide. And just a quick overview of the Build-in C bond program. State Law 2018-16 authorized the Build-in C Bond Act of 2018, authorized $3 billion for regional and divisional transportation projects. Debt service is paid from the Highway Trust Fund. Maximum issuance is $300 million per year and series without special legislation. Issuance is subject to certain constraints, as you see above. The first series was issued in 2019 for $300 million. Special legislation was passed in 2020. It was 2020-91 that allowed DOT to issue the second series of Build-in C bonds in November of 2020 at a one-time amount of $700 million. The third series were issued in May of 22 for a par of $300 billion. That leaves $1.7 billion remaining authorized but unissued on December 31st, 2022. Slide. We do this chart just as a measure of what the combined debt service and revenues of highway, what would be the debt service to revenue ratios, and As you can see, we are well below the 4.75 max limit for general fund debt affordability. Combined ratio peaks in 2023 at approximately 2.38 and declines going forward. Slide. Okay, on to the next topic of pension and OPEB liabilities. Pension liabilities were $14.8 billion at June 30th, 2022. OPEB liabilities were 23.8, which that represented a 23% decrease from 21 amount. Actuarial determined contributions are pension 2.9 billion and OPEB 2.1 billion. Slide. This chart is some data from Moody's report dated September 7th, 2022. It compares the key pension metrics of our AAA peer group states. And as you can see, we're doing pretty well against our peer group, particularly in the adjusted net pension liability per capita and as a percent of GDP. Next slide. OPEB, we're not doing as well here. We're mostly above the peer group medians and averages. You can see. Okay. This next chart highlights the prior 10-year history of the state's OPEB liability, and as you can see, OPEB liabilities have been up and down over that period. They averaged 30.3 billion. As I mentioned, there was a sizable decrease in OPEB liability from fiscal year 21 to 22, approximately 23% decline. And this question came up last year. What has the state done so far to reduce OPEB liabilities? And I have a list here of some things, key things the state has done. In 2017, the Debt Affordability Advisory Committee recommended applying some of the state's debt capacity to reduce OPEB and pension liabilities. In 2020, the General Assembly deposited an additional $30 million into the Retiree Health Benefit Trust. In 2018, the General Assembly stated the Employee Benefit Trust Fund, the Solvency Fund, to help reduce OPEB and pension liabilities. In 2021, State Law 2021-180 directed the allocation to the Solvency Fund of $40 million in fiscal year 22 and $10 million in fiscal 23. New state employees beginning work after December 31st, 2020 are no longer eligible to receive OPEB benefits. State Law 2020-48, Section 2B allows the Treasurer, with approval of the Board of Trustees, to direct a transfer of funds from the Public Employee Health Benefits Fund to the Retiree Health Benefit Trust Fund. Effective January 1st, 21, a Medicare Advantage contract procured by the state health plan reduced the fully insured Medicare Advantage premiums to zero for up to 5 years. Effective January 1st, 2023, the state health plan auto-enrolled all Medicare-eligible retirees into the fully insured Medicare Advantage program during the open enrollment. Medicare retirees still had the option to select self-insured coverage option at that time. Liability recommendations. As you saw, the state has large unfunded liabilities related to pensions and post-employment benefits healthcare. The state should not only recognize the magnitude and importance of these liabilities, but fund them with a continuing appropriation of $100 billion to the Solvency Fund, which was established in 2018, and which could continue to explore and implement other OPEB and pension liability reduction measures. And I'm going to talk just a few minutes about bond ratings. The state has maintained the AAA bond rating from all three major rating agencies since the early 2000s. They also have maintained a stable outlook. All three major rating agencies, Moody's, S&P, and Fitch, have reconfirmed the state's general obligation rating as AAA. Recent rating reports have implied a strengthening view of North Carolina's credit profile. Moody's, for example, in a report dated May 5th, 2022, stated that the state of North Carolina North Carolina's very strong credit quality is supported by a diverse economy exhibiting above average growth before the coronavirus outbreak and strong economic recovery coming out of the pandemic. North Carolina is building on its already healthy financial position with reserves projected to hit a historic high. State's debt and pension burdens are among the lowest of the state sector, a key credit strength. In July 21, Fitch Ratings wrote, the state is well positioned to address economic downturns with exceptionally strong gap closing capacity due to its broad control over revenues and spending and maintenance of reserves. In April 22, S&P stated, in our opinion, North Carolina has a low to moderate debt burden with rapid amortization. Its debt profile also benefits from established debt affordability processes and limitations that have stabilized debt over time. Okay, and I want to talk a little bit about the S&P report, and the committee has a copy of it. It was with the package. S&P Ratings uses a 4-point credit strength scale for each of 5 major economic categories. The scale rates between 1 to 4, with 1 being the strongest and 4 being the weakest. And as you can see, North Carolina scores well on all 5 economic measures and has recently strengthened in the economic profile, increasing in strength from a 1.9 down to a stronger 1.6. And the debt and liability profile has strengthened from a 1.8 down to a stronger 1.5. I mean, I've been working in the state debt section for almost 20 years, and those are the best scores that I've seen. And just finally, a quick review of the other previous committee endorsed recommendations. Control of debt authorization and management is a key credit strength and should remain a prerogative of the General Assembly. State aid intercept is opposed. Geo debt preferred, but not always the exclusive financing vehicle. Structural budget balance and replenishment of reserves should be a priority. And reliance on continuing resolutions for budget adoption should be an anomaly. Thank you for the opportunity to present this information to you today. Mr. Chairman, I'm passing it back to you for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. I have several questions, but I'll go to the members of the board first to see if they have any.
Mr. Treasurer, this is Nels Roseland. Hope you're doing well today.
Mr. Controller.
Could I ask that we go to slide deck number 30 on the recommendations?
We're there. Go ahead.
Sir, yes. There are 3 recommendations there, and from my quick review, it looks like there's 1 observation and then 1 recommendation and 1 really vague statement. I have no idea what it means. And wanted to clarify on the 3rd bullet, what does that mean, continue to explore and implement other OPEB and pension liability reduction measures? I didn't see any discussion in the 40-page report.
Lewis?
Well, what I meant was just that you saw the list of measures that had been done, and I was just saying that we should explore, other opportunities similar to those and implement it if possible to reduce those liabilities.
I can add some of that, Mr. Controller, if you'd like.
Okay.
Obviously, with the pension liability, the levers are number of active participants who pay into plan, the earnings on the plan, and how soon people retire and how long they live. That's basically about it. On the OPEB liability, obviously, as we continue to have, if we have success with the hospital cartel and helping us actually lower healthcare costs, that is a strategy that would make a huge difference in our OPEB liability. Secondly, if the General Assembly decided with any of its surpluses or rainy day funds to put more money into the solvency fund and to do that on a recurring basis, that would help us on the OPEB liability also. So the OPEB liability portion of my answer, Nels, is just to talk about what can be done to contain healthcare cost in relation to the trend that our actuaries are putting on our OPEB liability. And secondly, any things that the controller, the governor, or the General Assembly may do in terms of putting more money on a recurring basis into our solvency fund. Our percent liability funded for OPEB, I thought it was at 10%. It says in here 8.9, but maybe it's you're behind. But I think we're approaching our OPEB liability being 10% funded. It was at 2.5% funded. So that's the only editorial comment that I have, but I'll be glad to answer any more questions you may have.
Now, in terms of deliverables to the governor and to the General Assembly, the most solid recommendation, I mean, that context and the various options of continuing appropriations to the solvency fund, higher investment plan returns, potential benefit level or cost savings, that's I don't know, that involves a lot more extensive discussion. I'm just not sure how that is captured in the final report and whether you're requesting an endorsement of a big laundry list of multiple options or not.
I'm not.
Okay.
It was nothing more or nothing less than what you're reading there. We don't have a list over here on. We don't have any intent, anything that we can point to other than these things that we continue to focus on a daily basis, as you know.
All right. Thank you, sir. That's helpful.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Sure. On a related matter, if we go to 27.
Yeah.
It appears that we've made great progress, 21 over 22, in OPEB liability. But I presume that that's actually just a change in discount rate for the most part. Is that correct?
Great question. Normally, in the state health plan board meetings, we have these charts. I'm not the technology person, but I guess they call it a waterfall chart. And it shows where the liability started, where the liability ended, and what were the drivers that made it go up and made it go down. So the biggest decrease in this liability, to your question, was associated with the discount rate, the two biggest increases, and the savings of nearly $1 billion over 5 years off the Medicare Advantage contract. And one of those we had complete control over. The other were at the whim of whatever the 10-year municipal bond rate is that's published in the last week of June of every year. And that's the discount rate that the actuaries have to put in there. My point of answering that so exhaustively is that we know that the long-term answer to this is cutting healthcare costs and continuing to fund it more. We have some cities, in case you're not aware, like the city of Winston-Salem, I believe their OPEB liability is nearly 88% funded because they started putting money aside for this about 30 years ago. The city of Charlotte's got $160 million in it, and I think Wake County is going to start putting some money. So you're exactly right. Too long of an answer to your question, but this thing jumps around a lot. That's why have been very set on making sure that we don't change a lot of assumptions in these studies, because we never want the General Assembly not to take this liability seriously.
I appreciate the answer and the candor in the detail. I think it's probably useful to have a bit more detail here, maybe the waterfall chart you suggest, because I wouldn't want people to read this study and take away that we've made great progress here. We've made certainly some progress, but we've had a lot of help from the bond market too.
Yes, I totally agree. And as we approve this recommendation, I'll ask for whatever that motion is to be amendable by giving staff the ability to make any technical changes in this recommendation, as well as adding that chart.
Thank you.
Great point. I was thinking of that as I was going through it. It's in there? Okay, where? I'm sorry.
About this chart?
No, it's a chart that shows what made it change over the last 12 months.
Okay.
Yeah. Good point, though. Okay. Any other questions or concerns?
Mr. Chair, if I could,
Yes.
perhaps back on slide 30. And this, forgive me, it might be because I'm new, but I'm wondering why we're prioritizing, certainly OPEB and pension liability are critically important to the soundness of the state. I would never question that. But if we're going to pull out things from Moody's and S&P and the bond ratings, there's many other things that they called out that are weaknesses for us. So would appreciate sort of hearing how the committee landed on OPEB. You know, in the S&P report on the very first page, they make mention of the Leandro court order, which has now only since that time frame been confirmed and upheld by our Supreme Court. That's a liability we have. And additionally, Moody's talks about many other factors. I'll just call out one of them, but that is, they say in their report that, and this is similar to what you were talking about, that we are weak relative to other states in access to health insurance, and that we are one of the few that hasn't expanded Medicaid. So I'm just curious as to which one of these, why are we recommending certain things over others when the bond rating agencies have several factors that they've given us where we could improve?
The only answer I can give you is that this office doesn't have anything to do with Leandro. And what was the other issue you mentioned?
Well, Moody's makes a whole section, their ESG section speaks specifically to our state's failure to expand Medicaid. And they mention our, that we are 41st among 50 states with insured, and that might carry potential liabilities for the state. So I understand it's not the purview of the state treasurer's office. I'm just not sure that it's not the purview if this debt affordability committee is to look at liabilities of the state that expand beyond true debt, why we wouldn't be looking at a broader range of those liabilities.
The thought of putting Leandro and Medicaid expansion in here has never crossed my mind, and you know me well enough to know that if something had crossed my mind, I would admit to it. And I've never had any conversations with any member of the staff on that topic. I presume that these recommendations are just consistent with what we've done in the past in terms of pointing out unfunded health care and pension liabilities.
Small comment.
Yeah. General Counsel Aiken would like to say something.
Yes, this is Cindy Aiken. Ms. Walker, I think one of the reasons that OPEB is mentioned is during last year's meeting, there were multiple suggestions from the members, and it's in the minutes, and that might be the focus of OPEB this year, because there were requests that that this year's report showed historic OPEB unfunded liability for the state, and focusing on listing the different measures the state has taken to reduce the OPEB liability. So that's the only contribution I wanted to make. Part of this was in response to requests from last year's committee suggestions.
And Director Walker will take these two things that you just mentioned, now that you brought them up in our meeting, in under consideration for next year's report, if that's what you wish.
Yes, I'd appreciate that. If we're going to choose to look at what the rating agencies have to say, let's look at everything they have to say would be my request. And also, with all respect to Controller Roseland and the lack of specificity, I do wonder how much this committee needs to get into specific recommendations on what to do about OPEB. I agree that more specifics are generally better, but I did look at the minutes and it looked like there was some, I believe it was between Auditor Wood and former Budget Director Perouse discussing, adding some context of what we have done to address it. I'm not sure that it was actually to make a recommendation on what to do going forward in the future, but thank you for your consideration of that as we look to next year.
Be glad to do that. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I have one. Looking back over the 22 report, 2022, on the debt service of the transportation debt, obviously we had maxed out the credit card in 22. Now there's a little bit of headroom in the one that we're being asked to approve today. The biggest components of that, don't let me put words in your mouth, but I just need to say it, is the stopping of the transfer out of the highway trust fund. Was that the biggest? Because with interest rates going up, it was counterintuitive for me to see that we had more headroom. So go ahead.
Well, that and also the biggest thing I think is the sales tax transfer.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
That had a big impact on it. And that got them out, out underwater and have a small amount of capacity.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the DAC report as been presented by staff with a careful notation in our minutes that they're requesting for next year's stack for there to be other things dealing with what the credit rating agencies have pointed out. Do I hear a motion?
So moved. Kristen
Thank you.
Walker.
Thank you. A second.
I'll second that. This is Nels, Roseland.
Thank you. Motion and second being made. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Thank you. All right. Secretary Penny?
Aye.
Thanks. Mr. Akmus?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Briner?
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Schianelli?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Pomeroy?
Aye.
Treasurer Falwell?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. And before we adjourn, I just wanted to compliment the staff for both at the Treasurer's Office, the OSBM, and the General Assembly staff for helping put this up on the table. And as you may have heard, last week we announced that the North Carolina Department of Transportation has replenished the $1.2 billion that was taken out of the Highway Trust Fund, and they've done that in half the scheduled time. So I just want to say to everybody that's on this committee and in the earshot of what we're saying that that is great news. This debt affordability report that we just approved is great news. State debt coming down by 60% over 8 years is great news. And the work that the Secretary of Transportation Boyette has done with his team to have the clarity of thought and the discipline to put themselves in the right direction is also great news. So just hats off to Secretary Boyette and his team on what they've done. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Second.
This is Nels. I will second it, sir.
Thank you very much, Nils. Any further discussion to adjourn? And hearing none, the clerk will call a roll, and afterwards we will stand adjourned.
Okay, Ms. Walker?
Aye.
Thank you. Secretary Penny?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Briner?
Aye.
Gianelli?
Aye.
Mr. Pomeroy?
Aye.
Treasurer?
Aye.
Thank
And
you.
as we adjourn, I just wanted to do so in honor of Annie Brown Kennedy, who was a longtime representative from Winston-Salem, who I knew when I was in the General Assembly, and I think her service was either yesterday or today. And I'd like to adjourn our meeting in honor of Representative Annie Brown Kennedy. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.